We are live here. All right, welcome back. And we are live. Today we're going to talk all about natural solutions and scientific strategies to optimize testosterone levels, fertility, and erectile function in men. Now, we talk a lot about women's hormonal health on this channel, so please, ladies, this conversation is pertinent to you if you're a heterosexual woman in a relationship or seeking a relationship. The tactics that we talk about today might be helpful for you as well. And if you want to learn more about female hormonal health, please check out our podcast playlist. We just did a great show with Dr. Ellie Michelle. But let's get into the scope here. Men's testosterone is on the decline all throughout the world. And so this is what you're seeing, an age-independent reduction in all age categories and an obesity-associated decrease in testosterone in men. So this is really problematic, particularly for young men, particularly for men in their 20s, in their 30s, and beyond. So it's really important that we acknowledge the scope of this problem and address solutions. And so I want to share with you some interesting findings and correlations. Now, of course, we know that obesity is linked with low testosterone, but as this study found, there's an obesity-independent association with low testosterone levels that is occurring across the world. So let's talk about things that we can do. That's the problem. We know testosterone levels are on the decline. We know that adrenopause is happening earlier. That's not andropause. We're going to talk about andropause in a moment, but adrenopause is a phenomenon wherein the testosterone precursors start to decline, and that is problematic. So we're going to get into that and also talk about andropause, which is low testosterone. But we're going to start out with adrenopause, because this is important to recognize that starting in your 30s, the precursor to testosterone, as well as estrogens in women, known as DHEA, starts to go down. And that is problematic. And we're going to really dive into that. And then we're going to talk about nutritional strategies and solutions. So friends, that is where we are going. As always, I want to thank you for being here live. Really grateful that you are live here. Thank you for hitting that like button. If you're here right now and you're thinking, man, this content is good, please share this with a friend, tag a friend so that they can get access to this information. Look, I've had low testosterone in the past. I went to one of the top endocrinology clinics in Seattle, Washington at that time in 2004. And I got no solutions. I got no tools. That's what got me into this line of work, by the way. Low testosterone was a blessing in disguise for me because I realized that my diet, my lifestyle, my sleep, my stress management strategies, my overexercise strategies were causing me to feel lousy. And so I am living proof that you can optimize your testosterone levels. Next month, I'll be 41 years old. I feel better and I'm stronger than I was when I was 18. So, and the reason why I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt is I'm about to go to the gym after this. So let's get right into this study. This was a really fascinating study that dove into all of the different aspects of andropause as well as adrenopause. And that's something, again, that I think is just incredibly fascinating for folks. Just want to make sure we're here live and everything is good on the chat. Okay, so adrenopause is characterized by a reduction in secretion of dihydroepiandrosterone, DHEA, and its sulfated form, DHEA sulfate, with advanced age. And this starts to decline at around 40 years old. So approximately 70 to 90% of DHEA is produced in the adrenal cortex and is converted into DHEA sulfate. So when you test your blood levels for both testosterone, we're going to talk about sex hormone binding globulin, free testosterone versus total testosterone, as well as DHEA. Really important to recognize because DHEA is sulfated, and that's what you measure in your blood. So the remaining 10 to 25% of DHEA that's made by your adrenal glands, that is a precursor for testosterone, is released throughout the body and so forth. And really important because this serves as a precursor to many androgenic as well as estrogenic hormones, because DHEA is a primary precursor for the conversion of testosterone and the beneficial effect of DHEA on various aspects of blood sugar metabolism, aerobic capacity, muscle health, strength, and much more. So therefore, if you're worried about your testosterone levels, you first need to look at your DHEA levels. The scientists say low levels of DHEA or DHEA sulfate result in an even greater dysregulation of the overall hormonal profile. In fact, about 30% of the androgens in men and 75% of the estrogens in premenopausal women are produced from the conversion of DHEA and DHEA sulfate into the other molecules. So DHEA, really important. Now, let's get into andropause, testosterone. So important to recognize that how testosterone is made. Well, a lot of people think, well, it's made in the gonads, right? It's made by the testicles, but the messages start in the brain. And it starts out with the gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH, and that triggers the release of luteinizing hormone, which then binds to the cells, the Leydig cells in the testicles, and that stimulates the testosterone production in the testicles. So it's a brain. It's a first. Well, if you think about it like this, the hormone, the precursor for DHEA, the precursor of testosterone is DHEA. That's made by the adrenals. That gets circulated around in the bloodstream. The Leydig cells, once the brain messages to the Leydig cells, you start to make the testosterone. So if you have CTE, head injury, concussions, things like that, if you're not sleeping well, the whole HPA axis needs to be online. So managing your stress, managing your sleep, very important to testosterone, as well as having enough energy on board. You see, so many folks are chronically dieting, cutting the calories, and calorie restriction is linked with low testosterone. Here's exactly what the scientists say. In another study in young but healthy subjects, calorie restriction reduced testosterone levels some 27%. Additionally, calorie restriction reduces testosterone production in healthy animals in a dose-response fashion. And so this is known both in young and old animals that calorie restriction will reduce testosterone. Now, we talked about obesity. I want to get into that in just a moment, but I just want to mention, friends, some tools and solutions. You know, our sister company, Myoscience, offers tools and solutions. We get feedback all the time from the Alpha Male Stack. This features DHEA as well as a bovine testicular extract. You can save with the code podcast over at Myoscience. We get calls weekly from customers and their spouses that have found this to be very effective, especially for men when it comes to sexual performance. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Links are in the description below. Use the code podcast to save. So let's go on and talk a little bit more about some things that you can do. Okay, we've talked a lot about zinc before, so I'm not going to belabor zinc, but I will say that I've received a very interesting email from a doctor who has noticed in his patient the importance of zinc, and I want to share that with you on this particular screenshot right here, because this just came into our website right here. Okay, it says, I wanted to say or relay some positive feedback to Mike Mutzel. I wanted to share a case of mine who was a zinc deficient patient. Sorry, I'm reading far away here, so it's a little tough for me. I had him go on your Zinc Supreme supplement, and he's taking 80 milligrams a day. He had superb results within just a week, and later on, he found positive changes in his total and free testosterone. Benefits were observed physically and in blood work and continued to change months after. And so he wrote this up. So I don't want to release this doctor's name because I haven't gotten approval for that, so that's why everything's blurred out. However, zinc should not be underestimated, my friends. This is a natural, something that can be very effective. And here is how zinc works. Zinc works in the binding and the metabolism and the biosynthesis of testosterone. So if you look here in the upper right-hand corner, that's where you see testosterone being converted to dihydrotestosterone, which is very anabolic. And we want to focus on all these different minerals and compounds because it turns out they are quite effective in how they modulate hormonal production and much more. So I think it's really important to recognize that a whole foods diet and optimizing protein, just before starting this video, you know, I had some grass-fed whey protein with some whole raw milk, unpasteurized raw milk, and I've noticed just anecdotally that to be quite effective for helping to support exercise recovery and optimize exercise performance. But as you can see here, many different nutrients. We have zinc, we have magnesium. You know that magnesium is a cofactor for over 350 enzymatic reactions. And I want to focus on vitamin D. It turns out that vitamin D is very effective for modulating all sorts of immunologic and metabolic and hormonal pathways in the body. So vitamin D insufficiency is actually quite relevant to this conversation regarding testosterone. And that leads me to the seasonal variations in testosterone. It's been known in both animals as well as mammals and human primates that testosterone levels start to increase with the longer days and the exposure to the sun. So my friends, if you are feeling like your testosterone level is low this time of year, as we're approaching the end of July, that is problematic. And that could be an indicator that you are not getting, in addition to other factors we've been talking about, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, sleep, and all that, but sufficient sun exposure. This is a very simple strategy. In fact, scientists are now looking at the perineum sunbathing. Folks in Los Angeles and throughout California are going out on the beach naked and having the sun hit their genitals. It turns out that scientists are now actually starting to enumerate or quantify the effect of sun exposure on your gonads in terms of how it can improve testosterone levels. And mechanistically, this might be related to biosynthesis of testosterone and vitamin D within the Leydig cells themselves. And I think that's really important because remember, testosterone, as well as estrogen and thyroid hormone, all of the messages start up here in the brain, in the hypothalamus. And so again, this is why stress management, sleep, energy balance, micronutrients are so important, because these brain-based signals are going to go to the gonads, to the adrenals, to cause your gonads to release these hormones. And it's important to not just focus on the gonads themselves, but the brain-based messages. And that includes obviously reducing the amount of body fat you have, minimizing visceral adiposity, and all the other things. So let's continue on and talk a little bit more about, and here's where I want to go with this. I want to go and talk about, this is really interesting, I think, and this is the differences with age as it relates to sex hormone binding globulin and free testosterone. So let's dive into this. And I know it might look a little complex. There's a bunch of graphs here, but let's look at the ladies first, and then we'll get into the men. So what we are looking here is the increase in sex hormone binding globulin associated with age. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this, let me just cut back to the screen. The reason why I'm sharing this is there's a lot of testosterone products on the market. People will say, well, you take tribulus extract, and there's all these other compounds, some of which they reduce sex hormone binding globulin. Now, based upon this data and other data, I do not suggest that young people consider reducing sex hormone binding globulin, because as you can see, it's not really a problem. The problem associated with reduced bioavailability of free hormones is more a problem as you get older. So if you're 20 something, or you're 30, or you're in your 40s, as you can see here, SHGB in both men and women. Now, you might say, well, what is SHGB? Sex hormone binding globulin. Because it turns out that when your gonads make these hormones in both men and women, only about 1% is actually free. The rest of it is bound up in these binding globulins. Albumin is one. Sex hormone binding globulin, SHGB, is another. But as you can see from these images, SHGB really increases in your 70s and beyond. So if you're younger and you're trying to optimize your testosterone and you're taking all these supplements to purportedly reduce sex hormone binding globulin, I don't think that's the best place to start. I would start instead looking at your DHEA, looking at your micronutrients, ensuring that you're having adequate calorie balance, because as we've just talked about, being in a calorie deficit, always fasting all the time. So many people are enthralled with fasting. There are many health benefits linked with fasting, but I will tell you, excessive fasting will tank your testosterone. There's nothing wrong with 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, but ensure that you're getting sufficient energy on board. And equally important, not consuming excessive amounts of energy, because it turns out that your fat tissue has an enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen. It's called aromatase. And that is problematic, my friends. So the more visceral fat you have around the belly, that is going to take your testosterone and rip it to estrogen, which is problematic. And this is why you see oftentimes in morbidly obese and overweight individuals, they have gynecomastia. They have female-associated secondary sex characteristics. They have boobs. Why is that? Because their testosterone that they're making is getting converted to estrogen by the fat tissue. So I know people are saying, well, you can be healthy at any size, right? It doesn't matter. You're just little big boned. But we need to recognize that excessive, particularly visceral fat, is problematic for hormones. I just want to check in with you guys in the chat. How are we doing? If we're enjoying the content, let me know by hitting that like button. And we're going to continue on and dive into all of your live questions here. I'm sorry that we missed the live session on Monday. I was traveling. I was in Idaho and couldn't do the live session on my phone. So grateful again that you're all here. Okay. Rambler says, will a fluoride filter help with testosterone? This is a really good question. I think a fluoride filter would be more significantly impactful on thyroid health, not so much testosterone. Now, with that being said, I think, as we've talked about with different experts on this podcast, fluoride is a neurotoxin on par with lead. So I certainly don't endorse fluoride consumption through water. Fluoride is best used if you want to minimize cavities topically in low doses, but you don't need to have, there's no systemic need for fluoride, okay? But fluoride will actually bind to iodine. We know that iodine comprises various aspects of your thyroid hormone. T4 and T3 respectively are called those because they either have 4 or 3 iodine molecules. So fluoride and water filtration, really important. We just posted a show last Sunday with my friend, Dr. Anthony J, all about persistent organic pollutants. These things are in your water. My friends, there was a study that just came out that looked at tap water here in the US. 45% of tap water samples have alkyl fluoral compounds, perfluoro compounds. These will augment your hormone systems in a negative way. You do not want that. So Rambler, get a water filter. Absolutely. Okay, what else do we have here in the live chat? Part of these lives, obviously, is a theme discussion, kind of a rambling theme discussion, and getting to your live questions here. Eat like your hormones depend on it. Hey, Matt, that could be the next t-shirt right there. I'm digging that. I'm digging it. Okay, Rob says, somebody took their pre-workout a little early. Look, I had caffeine at 11 o'clock. But this is just how I talk when I do these lives because I feel it's a long story. But when I was actually about 15 years old, a friend of mine was like, you talk slow. And ever since then, I have been intentional about talking fast. And sometimes I talk too fast, but that's just how I am. So I will slow down. Okay. Jackie says, slow down. All right, I'll slow down. Here we go. Okay. PCT. Wasn't talked about like it is now. I also remember you saying you dabbled with exogenous hormones. Did that play a role in your low testosterone? Yeah, so this is a great question right here. So PCT is called post-cycle therapy. So any individual who goes on either hormone replacement therapy, like exogenous testosterone gels or creams, and or anabolic steroids, is familiar with this term, but some people are not. And it brings me to a topic that I think is really important, and that is for young men in particular. There is a breast cancer related drug that's used known as Clomid, clomiphene citrate, that can be helpful for young men, particularly men under 60, at improving testosterone levels. So Clomid, what it's been shown to do is tell luteinizing hormone in the brain to activate the Leydig cells. And so if you're thinking or considering having children and you don't want to go on hormone replacement therapy, whether it's gels, creams, or injectables, which again, I resort that to a last cause resort, especially for men under 50, okay? Clomid could be an option, but there are side effects with Clomid, mood swings, people have vision changes and the sort, but it's a recycled or repurposed drug that is usually given to women with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, but it can be helpful at improving testosterone levels in men. And so that's just something to consider. So Free Castellan, thank you for that great question. I like that. But yes, people that dabble, I've had friends who have taken SARMs and peptides and have had really low testosterone as a result. I've had friends who did anabolic steroids in their 20s and were infertile. So you young men out there that are impressed with all these big guys at the gym, you don't want to go down the anabolics route. Optimize your DHEA. Take some bovine testicular extract. Take 75 milligrams of zinc, magnesium, vitamin D. Go in the sun. These are all natural things that we can do to optimize things. Okay, so Carlos has a great comment. Just got a shipment from Bioscience today. Carlos, thank you for being a customer. Appreciate you. Berberine and the electrolyte sticks. Still have morning wood pills left, and that stuff is wild in a very good way. Wow. This has been surprisingly effective for a lot of people, myself included. So Carlos, thanks for that. Eric says, so both obesity and calorie restriction lower testosterone. Yes, that is... I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but again, for those of you that are here watching, if you're not just listening to this as you do your dishes or make some food or something to that effect, if you look here in the upper left-hand corner, what do you see? You see the adipose tissue. Remember, the adipose tissue has an enzyme in it called aromatase. Aromatase, what it does is it converts testosterone to estrogen. And in men and women as well, this is problematic. So, my friends, too much calorie restriction and too much visceral adiposity or belly fat is problematic. So that's important to recognize there. Great comment. All right. I love your live comments. That's why we do these, so that we can really connect. Okay. So why can high protein diets cause high sex hormone binding globulin and low free testosterone, not enough carbs or fats or insulin? Yeah, this is a great question, Gabrielle. You know, I'm not familiar with the dossier of peer-reviewed academic literature that supports high-protein diets and its links with testosterone. In fact, recently published studies have found that low-protein diets are more statistically significantly associated with low testosterone. So sufficient protein, because we know protein has these minerals like zinc, magnesium, and so forth that you're usually not getting from plants. We know that there are natural anti-nutrients in plants like phytic acid, oxalates, and things like that might actually bind to some of your minerals and prevent absorption of them. And we know these minerals are cofactors for conversion of the precursors of testosterone to their active molecules. So not saying you should never have plants, but just understand that protein from animal sources, fish, eggs, and so forth is really good for that. So, but again, the studies have shown, again, and I'm talking meta-analysis, actually, looking at large epidemiological studies have found that low-protein diets are linked with low testosterone. Okay, Matt M says zinc for the win, which is great. Okay. Detox Danny says, Becca here, borrowing my fiance's YouTube account. Oh, that's cool. I have a theory in terms of your thoughts. Do you think estrogen might go into overdrive, PCOS, as an attempt to counter heavy metal parasitic burden? You know, Becca, this is an interesting question here. I appreciate the question. While I'm familiar with the harmful effect of heavy metals, I'm not really well versed in parasitology and the sort. So basically what we have going on in women with PCOS, and there's different subtypes of PCOS, but in women, and this is actually a really good takeaway for everyone, what happens is as you get insulin resistant, the hormonal profile in men and women tend to flip to their reciprocal counterparts. So women tend to be hormonally more like men in the context of PCOS. And that's why women, when they're insulin resistant, they get more facial hair. They start to develop more androgenic-like features. They may even experience male pattern baldness. In contrast, in men, when they get more insulin resistant, they start to get higher levels of estrogen. They get gynecomastia, they get man boobs in the sort. So there's a hormonal profiling that seems to pivot, and it's like a reciprocal opposite in the genders. And so that's just a simple thing to understand is, and tacitly implied throughout this discussion, is metabolic health is really vitally important to hormonal health. So that's what I would say there, Becca. But heavy metals, of course, can cause insulin resistance and cardiovascular disease and inflammation. So that's an important thing to consider. Again, is this helpful, friends? If it is, just hit that like button. That just lets me know that we should do more videos like this. Okay. All right, the Quantum Alchemist says, wait, anabolic means muscle building. Small correction, DHT, testosterone, is minimally anabolic. In fact, DHT, however, is highly responsible for making males masculine. Yeah, so that's an interesting comment. To the best of my knowledge in the anabolic literature, DHT is one of the more anabolic derivatives of testosterone. But perhaps I haven't looked at that literature in a while, so the Quantum Alchemist, maybe you know more about this than me. So thank you for your comment. But to the best of my knowledge, it's quite anabolic. But the problem with DHT is if you're genetically prone to male pattern baldness, that it can affect the hair bulb and the follicle and predispose individuals to losing more hair. And that's why I suggest ketoconazole shampoo. You know, ketoconazole, the antifungal agent. Just type in ketoconazole shampoo, go to Walgreens, go to Rite Aid, you can get some. So men, if you want to keep your hair, use that twice a week, and that can really help keep your hairline. Okay. Another important building block in building any hormone in the body is, surprise, surprise, cholesterol. Yes, the Quantum Alchemist, again, with a great comment. Yes, cholesterol, take a look at the human hormone synthesis. Absolutely. That is, of course, a primary building block. And so we appreciate that comment for sure. But again, today we're talking about the different micronutrients and lifestyle factors, but I really, really appreciate that comment as well. Okay, let's go on here. Is 9 milligrams of boron enough to free up testosterone from sex hormone binding globulin? You know what? I have bad news. The literature on boron is not that good. I mean, there's not really compelling evidence that boron is clinically effective for improving testosterone. There's a few different studies. Trust me, don't get me wrong, but it's not like overwhelming. If you're going to take one supplement, you know, go with zinc, because zinc is really affordable. You can get a bottle of zinc for under $20, okay? And the data is unequivocal that zinc increases testosterone and zinc deficiency lowers testosterone. Boron, however, the data is, some studies show yes, some studies show not so good. So I know people are very excited about boron. You see it on Amazon. Everyone recommends it. It's like this new thing, although it's Jonathan Wright, by the way, has been talking about boron since I started getting into this work in the early 2000s. I mean, this is not a novel thing, but it may be effective for certain people. I think there are subtypes who might really benefit from this. And I think if you're going to consider boron, as I mentioned, the SHGB problem is more significant as you get over 70. So for those of you that are over the age of 70, perhaps boron could be a more effective supplement and you might get more benefits from that. But as you can see here in the levels of sex hormone binding globulin, they really start to increase around 65 or 75 years old. And that's when you start to see the tanking of bioavailable testosterone. So, for those of you that are young and so on, I don't know that boron is going to be something that I would really do a lot of focusing on. That's just my perspective. Tunga Ali. Okay, this is a great question here. Thank you from QNZ to King. Really appreciate that. I've experimented with this. Didn't really notice a whole lot. That's just me personally. The literature on it is kind of so-so. To the best of my knowledge, the mechanism of Tunga Ali is by reducing, again, the sex hormone binding globulin. So perhaps this particular herb could be a little bit more effective for individuals over the age of 60, wherein the bioavailability of testosterone is a problem because of the high sex hormone binding globulin. So those are my perspectives. Okay. I am a neurotype 2 athlete. I need adrenaline to feel good and confident. Is there any supplements for adrenaline support, and does it help produce testosterone? Okay, just a small plug. You all know my conflicts of interest with myoscience, but one way to help to support the adrenals is with DHEA supplementation. Just a small plug here. The Alpha Male Stack is a combination of the Morning Wood with DHEA. So if you're wanting to optimize adrenal health, DHEA is the first thing that I consider. So great question there. I would also look at adrenal glandulars. Again, our sister company, Myoscience, offers that as well, the Adrenal Thyroid Assist. So adrenal glandulars can be effective, as well as adaptogenic herbs, ashwagandha, rhodiola, schisandra, erythro, and all that. So adaptogens can be helpful for sure. Okay, what fish do you recommend? Sardines or anchovies? Trying to keep mercury content low. Yeah, so I think I like herring. And sardines, and of course, living in the Northwest here, Seattle, Washington, wild caught salmon is going to be my go-to, especially during this time of year. So that's what I would recommend. Great comment there. If you like anchovies, go for them. I like them on maybe a pizza every now and then, but I'm not a huge. I'm not just going to start crushing anchovies, but it's a good question there. Okay, let's see here. Another question. Any preferred adaptogens of yours? Yeah, the ashwagandha sleep aid is a good one. And that features the ashwagandha 35. We're coming out with another formulation using the KSM 65 material. So there's different standardized extracts of the herb ashwagandha. And so the KSM 65 and also the sonolin 35 material is supposed to be really effective. And so that's what we use is the 35. So the ashwagandha sleep aid, you can check that out. So Kyle, thanks for that great comment there. Okay, eating herring and sardines right now. Perfect sides to bacon wrapped steak. That does sound quite tasty. Okay, let's finish off with just a few things that I wanted to dive into real quick. And talking about SHGB and testosterone and VO2 max and muscle. I think this is really important. So sex hormone binding globulin is the primary binding protein for testosterone and reduces the transport of testosterone into the cell, thus inhibiting its biologic action. Testosterone also binds to albumin in the blood, but the movement of testosterone is less restricted by albumin and reaches the intracellular compartment. After transport through the circulation, testosterone exerts its effect by binding to the intracellular androgen receptor, which subsequently is transported as the androgen receptor testosterone complex into the nucleus. So a lot of complex biochemistry. Basically what happens is there's just a small fraction of the hormones that are made by your gonads free. They're mostly bound up to either albumin or sex hormone binding globulin, and then they go into your cells and they stimulate the nucleus to start making proteins. Okay. And the activation of this hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis has a robust anabolic effect, increasing muscle mass and strength, which is why we're talking about this. Remember, muscle is a glucose and insulin and leptin sponge. Muscle is a glucose, insulin, leptin sponge. So if you don't have muscle, my friends, you start eating carbs, you eat bread, you eat cookies, you eat ice cream, you eat pasta. It has nowhere to go. And then the liver will back convert that into fat. It's called de novo lipogenesis. So you need muscle. It's really basic. People who have a lot of muscle, they can eat a lot of crap and they still don't get fat because their body has a reserve, a sort of depot for the glucose to go. And it's really important. And so we know that muscle is really important. And there's this whole phenomenon of this sarcopenic obesity where people are overweight but are under muscled. And so that is problematic because the fat cells start to really enlarge. So they get overstuffed, and then the fat cells start releasing the fat, and it goes all over the body, and it's problematic. Okay, so let's talk about an interesting concept on dehydration that we can talk about later, but that will be another discussion. I think today, what else did I want to dive into? Oh, again, that there's only 1% to 2% of your free testosterone is not bound to binding globulin, so that's important. And again, the folks that might benefit the most from supplements and compounds that reduce SHGB are people over the age of 65. So that is, I think, where we're gonna end it today. If there's any final questions here, my friends, I am happy to really dive in and explore any personal questions, any nuanced questions. We talked a little bit about Clomid. We talked a lot about anabolic agents, minimizing hair loss. If you want to, with ketoconazole shampoo. We talked about zinc. We talked about vitamin D. We talked about a lot of things, my friends. So again, if you watched all the way through, hit that like button. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section below. I'm so grateful that you tuned in here live on a Thursday. We will be back next Monday live. We're doing the Metabolic Mondays. I was out of town this week, just got back from Idaho. So sorry for missing out on Monday, but grateful that you tuned in on a Thursday. Have a good evening. I will, in the show notes below, I'll link to these resources that we talked about. This study was really good. I think if you like studies, you'll like this one. And this study was just fascinating. This study from scientists in Israel finding that testosterone levels have just tanked in men across all age groups, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. Here is the chart here. Testosterone levels are on the decline, which is problematic for fertility, for mental health, for muscle, and all the stuff. So it's time that we optimize hormone levels in both men and women. And that's why we made today's show. So we'll catch you on a future episode down the road. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the content. We'll see you all later. Bye now.